Hi everyone, this is Nivedan again here from Coffee and Startups podcast, and we have our guest Sandeep Medarametla today. We are speaking with him for the second time. The first time we spoke with him earlier was around the philosophy of a lot of philosophy, politics, and all the fundamentals of blockchain. That is what we covered last time, and this time we are here to learn more about what he's doing. He's building a very interesting startup, as you may call it, which is called MandeChain, right? And he has brought a very interesting concept of doing a human IPO, and that's what we're going to explore today. Why a human IPO? What the hell that even is? Right? And what makes someone crazy enough to consider doing something like this? So we're going to explore a lot of that today. And here's a quick brief background for him again. He's a serial entrepreneur, an IIT Madras dropout, and he sold his cloud kitchen startup earlier, right? And now that he's doing MandeChain and following his passion and love for part-time philosophy. So that is something that I found very interesting about him. He's got a very unique and philosophical take around everything. And without making everything too technical, I love that we have the possibility of bringing a more broader liberal arts perspective to blockchain as well. So I have enjoyed doing this conversation last, and I'm looking forward to it again today. So hi, Sandeep. Welcome to Coffee and Startups. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here again.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you and the audience here. Thanks a lot.
Amazing. So Sandeep, I want to start with, a quick, if you were to give an elevator pitch on what MandeChain is, let's give that context and we'll get into the conversation right after it.
Yeah. So with MandeChain, we ask this very simple question. How do you sort of trust anonymous people on crypto, right? How do you sort of figure out, is there a mechanism in which I can trust anonymous public addresses, right? Now, why have that? The reasons can be many. I mean, to sort of get loans or do business with them, to do transactions between multiple keys, public keys, which are completely anonymous. So that's where we started. Is there a way we can sort of build a trust around anonymous public addresses on chain? So we are trying to solve that using some techniques, and a lot of ecosystem upgrades that are coming along in the whole crypto ecosystem itself. So we want to be part of that wave. I mean, how to sort of take these anonymous public addresses and make them trustable in that sense on the internet. That's the core problem we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve the problem of trust for anonymous public addresses. Right now, blockchain has already solved the problem of doing transactions trustlessly. Like, you don't have to depend on a bank or a centralized institution for it to happen. It can happen on a public immutable ledger.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that all these anonymous public addresses that are participating on the chain, first of all, trust each other? Like they need a mechanism to trust each other to do transactions.
Trust each other for what purpose are we talking about here?
I mean, see, trust goes all the way from small things to bigger things, right? When you do small transactions, or when you sort of buy something or sell something, to all the way till who is your family, whom are you going to share your secrets with, or stuff like that. Or if you are to get a loan, will the bank trust you? Similar use case. Like, I think trust is there in every single touch point of our life. There is trust between us and our family, us and our community, us and the banks we work with, and stuff like that. But in crypto, the whole form it takes is these are all anonymous public addresses. Like, nobody knows who these people are. There is a public key, and whoever is the owner of the private key is the owner of the public key. Like, now when we're talking about these public keys, which are completely virtual and anonymous, how do they trust each other in the first place for transactions to happen, right? Transactions can happen trustlessly on a immutable blockchain ledger similar to Bitcoin, but how will they, in the first place, a priori, how will they trust each other? So that's the problem, and the problem goes from all the way to doing a small transaction to a very large transaction.
So tell me if I'm getting it right. We've been transacting on the blockchain for about a decade now, right? Or more rather. And until now, trust meant that if I own certain value which is like a figure and like a piece of a string of text or code, or at the end of it, right? Or it can be a Bitcoin which represents value. If I own something, only I own it and nobody can take it away from me. That that was the idea of having security around my ownership, right? So the trust took the form of security where, okay, I trust that nobody in the system can take away my money, or nobody can take away my identity, nobody can take away my art form. That was the form trust took here, in the form of security. In other use cases, do you think trust is about, or credibility, trust in this case means that if not about transaction only, but if I promise a future transaction, can you trust me? Is that the trust we are talking about, which is different from, oh, let's exchange this right away?
Yeah. So see, if you want a transaction, there's only three parties. One is the two parties who are transacting, and there is a middle guy who is enabling the transaction. And both the people who are doing the transaction are saying, we trust this middle guy, right? That's how the world works right now, right? The middle guy can be a bank, it can be government, or it can be somebody else who is enabling the transaction or trusting the transaction. So the enablement of transaction part, blockchains have solved it without a third party or a need for it. Blockchain, Ethereum or Bitcoin and stuff like that have solved it. Even from a future transaction point of view, the whole smart contract ecosystem, like you deposit some money into the smart contract, and if something happens, then the money goes, or the transaction happens, right? Even programmatically doing this transaction also is solved to a certain extent. What is not solved is how do I get these people to first of all trust each other, right? To do a transaction. For example, I met you online, right? I don't even know who you are. You are a virtual avatar, okay? And you promised me that you'll sell me some drugs. I'm just giving an example, right? Now, first of all, how do I know that I can trust you? Because you can never reveal your identity. At the same time, if you reveal your identity, you'll have your issues or whatever. So you're never going to reveal me your identity. So I am never going to know who you are. But if I want drugs, there is a need for me to trust you over the internet.
Correct. So that's you're trusting that I will uphold my promise. That's the trust here, right?
Yeah,
and which is different from the trust that on this system, nobody takes away my money, right?
Exactly.
So in this case, essentially, that is equivalent to what credit score is, for example. Am I right?
Yeah,
the trust that a centralized authority has assigned that this person has a history of repaying their credit every time. So this person is more trustworthy, more credit worthy, which means you can make any promise based transactions with this person.
Yeah, so there are many different ways in which the current world operates to enable that trust, right? In the sense, credit scores, ratings, or for that matter, brand image or brand value, right? If you buy from a certain brand, that brand will deliver you things, right? So all these are symbols which we use to enable that trust virtually.
Got it.
Right. So that now the idea is, okay, now we are taking anonymous public addresses. What symbols or how can we symbolically enable the same kind of trust over a chain? That's the main question. How do we symbolically enable that kind of a trust, right? Of course, credit score or scoring is one way, right? But can we build better symbols such that somebody in Africa will be able to sort of do a transaction somewhere in North America and exchange something, right? Without revealing their identities to each other. Like, can we do that? That's the question. Right? That's a simple explanation. But then it can happen to a larger context as well, right? For example, on the whole, we are dependent on many institutions for our day-to-day life. For example, we create a family institution, right? A space where we can be more intimate, where we can sort of count on each other, to do family things, right? Mathematically speaking, even intimacy is a form of transaction. It's a give and take, right? It not necessarily be money. That's the idea. We sort of depend on family to do more intimate transactions or more intimate support system, right? If we go to a community level, we might be getting some benefits from the community, or we might be giving back to community in some sense, right? All the public roads and stuff like that. So there is another level of trust over there, right? And then you depend on government, and you sort of trust the government. So in the last video, we spoke about how power and trust are sort of mutually exchanged in various of the systems, right? So that's the idea in the sense, because we have over the years we have evolved to create these institutions to enable trust, knowingly or unknowingly, and because there is trust, there is life, almost to that point. But what if we can enable trust to that level between total strangers? Is that even if such a thing such a thing happens, if we can enable that level of trust within complete strangers over the internet by some mechanism, how will the world look like, or how will the relationships look like at that point of time, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the question basically, right?
Wow. I mean, it's such a. I just realized that without giving up your identity, essentially even while maintaining your anonymity, if there is a way to have trust. So not knowing who is the person across the screen and still being able to trust them fully, if this is a new world altogether. I don't think we have really good equivalents anywhere in the history to look back at where anonymity and trust were done together. Am I right on this?
Yes, I mean...
Not at a scale level, right? We're talking about scale inherently, not maybe one odd cases here.
Yeah, it's not there, right? I mean, what blockchain has done, right? I mean, blockchain managed to build systems which can be trusted without anybody running them, right? But we are trying to take it a notch up, and we are trying to say, now let's humanize this, right? So blockchain is a system which enables, which is trustless, that people can do transactions without trust. But at the end of the day, people have to trust each other. If there are human beings behind this, they need trust, and they have to trust each other in order to do transactions. Is there a way to even solve that problem? Can we actually humanize the chain to a point that we can make these anonymous addresses trust each other? If such a world happens, if such a thing can be built, applications can be many for such a thing. Yeah. So that's the overarching part.
Got it. So what you've just explained is about MandeChain, what it is at its core in a principled way. Is Human IPO one of its applications? And will there be more applications that will be built on MandeChain tomorrow?
So I would not say MandeChain is doing this alone. It's again an ecosystem-wide thing to be solved. And I mean, for example, a lot of DIDs, digital identifiers, are being spoken about in Polygon and Cosmos chains. All the Ethereum ecosystem is talking about this new token system called SBTs, soul-bound tokens, right? So in a way, all of these ideas fit into a similar problem statement. How can we solve trust between completely anonymous individuals?
Got it. So there's a multiple players in this ecosystem who are working towards this, and their collaboration, their cooperation is needed for really making it happen.
Exactly. I mean, so we don't know how it is going to play out or who is going to do the maximum impact from an impact point of view. But it's good to see that a lot of people are taking on this problem and trying to solve it, or trying to write papers or write code to solve it. So and that is happening right now. So I would not claim that we are trying to do it for the first time or anything. There are no big there, but I think it's an interesting problem, and MandeChain also wants to participate in this overall ecosystem-wide problem and do our contribution, by building something here. And we sort of look at the reason we speak about human IPOs is, we sort of said, okay, fine, there are multitude of applications that are possible because of this, right? I mean, you might actually build a new online forum where people can trust the news everybody shares, right? You can use trust like that also, right? But what is that one thing? What is that one North Star problem statement that, if we achieve our vision, that we will be able to realize? That North Star problem statement seemed to us like human IPOs, right?
So let's explain what human IPO is first. Exactly.
Yeah, human IPO is nothing but, you sort of look at somebody, their story on a chain, and I mean, somebody comes to blockchain and builds their story on chain using SBTs or credibility scores and stuff like that. And eventually you sort of look at all this track record, and when he sort of issues token to go an IPO, you invest in him. So you invest directly into people using human IPOs. So imagine, somebody sitting in Europe, investing in a kid sitting in Zambia in Africa for his education. Investing, not donating, right? That's the idea. Even donating today comes with its own credibility problems. Like, imagine you met somebody online in Zambia, and the guy asks you for money and he quotes some problems. You don't know how you can trust him. We're trying to solve the trust problem so that you can give that money to him, or you can invest that money into him. That's the idea.
Oh, and who does it mean the most for? Who is it for primarily? Like, who are the people going to adopt it first? Let's start with that.
At this point of time, we can only speculate. I mean, these ideas are fundamentally going to change the world, so we don't know where it starts first, or who is the reason behind it. In some sense,
what does your hunch say? What does your hunch say about this?
I think a lot of outliers, people who can deliver exceptional outcomes, or they will deliver nothing. Like for example, somebody who is an aspiring cricketer, for that matter, right? There are so many people who are aspiring for cricket. So many kids who are 12-year-olds to 15-year-olds, right? But then only some of them probably will end up making to the national team, and they will probably end up seeing a lot of success, fame, and money. But a lot of them won't, right? So these exceptional outcomes, right? Some entrepreneurs will make it big, a lot of them won't. Some musicians will sort of make it really big. A lot of them will sort of end up as average, or they won't get any result. So I sort of look at this section of people as one good place where it sort of can start off with. Another great section is all humanitarian aid and charity funds, right? Today, a lot of cross-border funding. I mean, when a war is happening in Ukraine, a lot of people send money, crypto donation to Ukraine, right? But whom to trust there? Like, how do you know that, when you send money to somebody in Ukraine, they actually use for the right things, right? So by solving trust, we can also solve problems like a lot of charity-related problems, over the chain, where, people, we can trust the system to do the right thing. When system says this guy can be trusted, that guy can be actually trusted. It can be do something like that. So problems like that can be one immediate use case for this. So I mean, it's not a form of human IPO. It's a form of donating money to real humans. But the contract has changed. You're still giving money to people, but it's as a donation, not as an investment.
Understood. Yeah, the underlying basis on which you are making that transaction remains the same. The use case, whether it be for a charity purpose, whether it be for investing in a person as an asset, that can change, but the underlying idea that you can trust someone and hence you can enable something remains the same across these use cases.
Exactly. And a lot of other seemingly immoral or illegal use cases, right? In a sense, how do you sort of do counterfeit good trades, or how do you sell drugs online, or all these secret information or information leaks. A lot of these also sort of fall under the category of anonymity plus trust combined, right? All of them, sexting, online sexting, all of these also can be enabled with such a technology, not only human IPOs.
Very interesting. Now tell me, why and how is this different than something like a Kickstarter? Why can't I go on Kickstarter today, make a video and say, hey, you know what, I'm Nivedan and I'm making this content with coffee and startups, and it's going to blow up. I'm going to get a lot of amazing guests and blah blah blah. I'm going to sell a dream there, and then tell people that what, if you invest in me today, you're going to reap rewards tomorrow. How is it different from Kickstarter in the first place?
I think Kickstarter and other methods are early replicas of what can happen, examples.
Okay.
But if you talk about scale, like how can 1 billion people do IPOs, right? How can 1 billion people not take money from their fathers to fund their education, but go IPO and fund their education? Such a future cannot be imagined on Kickstarter, right? Because Kickstarter has a verification process, control process. You have to come up with an idea, or you have to show something. It's not feasible for one and all people, right? So how can you make 1 billion people go IPOs, right? Imagine such a system exists, or such a world exists. How can such a world be realized? So when we're talking about human IPOs, we're talking at that scale. And when 1 billion people goes IPOs and their tokens are being traded on a platform on these cryptographic networks, it changes the entire finance industry. It changes the entire way people are funded, people pay back. So we're trying to imagine that world where it is happening at that scale.
Wow. So let's talk about the scale of one for now. You have done your own IPO. Yeah. What happened there? What does Sandeep Medarametla's IPO mean, and how was your journey through it?
So, I mean, I know that the world I'm talking about is still not built. We didn't get there. But I decided, if this is the dream I'm standing up for, I'm not claiming that it is my dream or anything. It's a dream I'm standing up for. Why not do it by myself first to start with? So that's the reason I sort of launched my own human IPO. I did it similar to the Kickstarter way. I put up some videos and some track record here and there, and I sort of built a credibility on profile similar to the Kickstarter way, and sort of launched my human IPO on Ethereum chain, and there are some investors who invested, and there is 4 more months for the IPO to close. So I mean, it's okay, it's going decently so far, but I really want to sort of you can call it in a lot of lame language, I'm basically trying to drink my own Kool-Aid and tell people, hey, what if this can be done, right? So yeah, so so that's the way I see it. I think it's been tremendous. A lot of my friends, some of them cracked jokes on me. Some of them said, "Yeah, this is very cool. This is very innovative. Let me also support a little bit," and invested. Some strangers invested. So it's going okay. I think we have more time to go. So
what is the tally so far in the first 2 months?
I raised 3 Ethereum so far. Yeah.
That would be what? How much so far? 3 Ethereum.
I mean,
this?
2 months back, it was in INR, it was worth some 8 lakh rupees. As of today, it is worth 2 lakh because the market has fallen.
Your value has crashed, Sandeep. You said that, like you said, you've raised this much money, but what is the prospectus? What is the proposition here? Like, let's say I were to do it. Like, how about, let's do this. How about you pitch what you pitched in your this fundraise thing? You made a video as well. So can you give me a short pitch of, who are you, let's say, and why should I invest in you, and what will I get in return when? Why don't we do this little exercise?
So I sort of launched my Human IPO. The Human IPO closes on October 20th, 2022. Anybody can invest in it. All investors will be issued deep coin, which are freshly minted. As per a proportion to Ethereum, they invest into me. So essentially, whoever buys deep coin right now will become deep coin holders. People who hold deep coin. My promise is 8 years from now, that is October 20th, 2030, I will buy back all the deep coin by liquidating 5% of my net worth, whatever my net worth is going to be on that date. So this is 8 years is the game period. Within these 8 years, people can speculate on what can be the eventual valuation of deep coin is. And I'll be putting out information honestly about what my net worth is every 3 months. This is the overall deal. So based on my expected net worth, of course, people can trade deep coin with each other and speculate on it and trade it. But I'll eventually sort of put up a deal where I sort of buy back all the 5% of the coins on October 2030. Now that needs trust. That the idea that you have to trust me that I'll buy it back with 5% of my net worth and I'll announce my net worth diligently. That problem needs trust in me. And that is the exact problem I'm trying to solve with MandeChain and other things. How can we actually enable that trust between individuals?
Got it. So this sounds like an attractive proposition. So essentially, if I in simpler terms, let's say I buy $100 of worth of your deep coins, right? And by the end of the 6 months, if you raise, let's say $1,000, so I hold 10% of 5% of your net worth. Then is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And if you end up raising a lot, which means $10,000, let's say, then I only hold 1% of 5% of your net worth.
Yes.
So in a way, you're saying if more people support you, I lose. Is that the case?
Yeah. If more people support me, that also means that I'm more trustable, right?
Well.
So because I'm more trustable over the internet. That's the idea in the sense, now you are trying to make a judgment in your head about whether you trust me first. Once you decide to trust me first, then then your investment will proportionate to your holding. So you're going through two filters: how much you can trust me, and how much will I be capable of raising eventually by the time I turn. How much will I be capable of? How much net worth I am capable of generating? So your decision to invest in me will depend on these two decisions for you, right? How much can you trust me, and how much will be my potential? So there
are two parts. So yeah, let's pick each of these two parts. One is how much can I trust you? Here, the sense of trust is basically you won't run away with my money, right? So that's the minimum level of trust. And second trust is that you will, after 8 years, you will.
That is judgment on the kind of ideas I have or kind of skill sets I have. It's a transactional judgment on how much potential I have.
No, but it also involves the trust that, there is this underlying layer of security that I need. That by investing in Sandeep, I am assured that at least this guy is not going to run away. Right.
Exactly.
That's the level one, right? So that is a minimum level of trust. I have to keep my investment secure before I talk about returns. Let's just talk about that much. Then I need to also be able to trust that over these years, for these 8 years, every 3 months, you're going to put out your net worth statement and whatnot, right? I need to be also able to trust you that you will reveal the right figures and statistics, or is there a way that I can cross-check independently here?
There is no, I mean, see, the thing is, at the end of the day, I am, the way I'm positioning it is, I am either $1 billion bet or nothing, right? The kind of projects I'm working on and things I'm doing right now and I'll continue to do. You will see me as somebody who is building a multi-billion dollar business, or I'll end up building nothing, because that's the kind of risk profile I am choosing to be, right? So the moment I am building something huge, it becomes verifiable in the world as it is today. Right? I mean, I cannot build $1 billion business in hiding. I can probably make 10 lakh rupees in hiding, but I cannot build $1 billion business in hiding, right? So the way I want my Human IPO to pursue me is either look at me as somebody who has potential to build $1 billion company. If you believe that, yeah, maybe this guy has the potential, invest in me. And the outcome will be also similar in the sense you will either see me making $1 billion or you'll see me making nothing, right? That's the idea.
Got it. So I mean, I mean, I'm betting on the idea that Sandeep may be that outlier that I've been hoping for.
Exactly. And if you might make a 1000x reward. If he's not, you will lose one. That's the idea. It's a bet.
Got it. Makes sense. And 8 years from now, when you want to buy back your deep coins, what if I don't want to sell it to you? I believe that you're going to do much better in another 8 years. How does that work out?
Yeah, so you don't have to. If you don't sell the deep coin back to me, cool. You can keep the deep coin. And just that I won't buy it back after that contract date.
Got it. So if the secondary market wants to buy it,
yeah, if there is a meme, if there is a value for deep coin as a meme coin or something, you can continue to have it. Like for example, if you take Shiba Inu or Doge right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're not saying that you want people to transact with Deepcoin or anything. What you're saying is this is proof of your ownership in my journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So it's meant to serve a purpose. It's meant to serve a timeline, and I don't need to speculate further than that. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. You have a proof of ownership. Whoever has Deepcoin has invested in me. That's a proof.
Got it. And is there any condition in which you could change the date of redemption?
Of redemption as in October 20th? No, there isn't. These 2 dates of.
If this date happens to be just a day before your bank account was filled with $1 billion additional.
Right. Yeah.
I am just in bad luck. And vice versa, by the way. But yeah. That's the case? Okay, very interesting. I mean, this is basically the first version of Human IPO. I see that it makes very perfectly logical sense that this is how, and I take my chances, right? 8 years is a long enough timeline to say that something fruitful will come out of it. It's not the same as 3, 4, 5 years. It's 3, 4, 5 years may be too small, and 10, 15 years may be too long for someone to see the cycle through. So 8 years sounds like a very reasonably picked time that you have there.
Exactly. And like this is not a massive risk bet, right? You probably invest 0.1 Ethereum in me. If you're 8 years, I'll give you back 100 Ethereum. Right? That's the idea.
Not bad, yeah. All the return that comes out will be like Ethereum to Ethereum. I mean, or do you have another currency?
Yeah, you invest in Ethereum and take out in Ethereum. That's the because we are doing it on a different blockchain.
So everything will be translated to that day's Ethereum value.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't matter whether someone's dealing in INR or dollars or whatsoever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yes.
Got it. Makes perfect sense.
You invest in Ethereum, you sell back in Ethereum. That's the idea.
Got it. And do you kind of also show a roadmap of, the way these startup founders, when you pitch it to investors, you show a roadmap that, across these quarters and years, this is how we plan to ship our product and acquire these many customers. Have you also pitched that? Or I mean, that's a part of my faith in you that, I believe this guy, he'll figure out the roadmap, or is the roadmap public today?
So, to be honest, I'm doing my IPO round 1, where I'm liquidating 5% of my net worth. Right now, I am working on a bunch of ideas which are very high potential to return a lot of profit to you. I think my ideas are public. I've been talking about them, and I have put on DeepCoin site as well. But I have not given a fixed projection or a roadmap going forward, how MandeChain is going to play out, or other thing I'm working on, EatX is going to play out. It's public on, the kind of things I'm working on and what the potential is. Based on that, the investor can make a decision. In the follow-on rounds, where I probably will launch my IPO round 2, where more equity will be issued. I'm not promising anything, but in case if that happens, maybe that will be like your much more mature version of what we're doing in round 1.
Wow, amazing. So basically, Sandeep, you've created a new asset class, and you are one of the assets now officially. People now look at you as a walking account holding money. Is that correct?
I think every human being is an asset.
Yeah.
So it depends on who, that's the idea. Yeah, but that statement has 2 ways to look at it. One is, okay, you value somebody for what they are, but if you end up owning 100% of somebody, that's basically bonded labor, bonded slavery, right? So we don't want. On a moral and principle grounds, also there are many consequences to human IPOs.
Let's talk about them. Yes.
Yeah. So what if one person owns 100% of one person, right? Then the other person is essentially a slave to this first person, right? Depends on the contract they make, but still. But then simulate the situation. What if somebody sells 100% of themselves, right? To 1,000 different people, right? For example, if you take an army soldier, the soldier is essentially has completely given up his life to serve the country. You can look at him as with honor that he's serving the country. At the same time, you can look at him like a bonded laborer who is giving up his life, his relationships, his mom and dad, his wife, everything for the country, right? So there are both arguments, right? Morally, how it can sort of play out, it's up to the sci-fi and sci-fi authors to figure it out at this point in time.
Yeah, that is one hell of imagination to see what does people owning people. So if we were to put you in a court, will the accusation be, are you the one selling your soul? Or maybe, you know what? In fact, I could title this podcast as the man who sold his soul for cryptos. That will be a great clickbaity title. Like, what? A man is selling his soul. And this has so many bad connotations, but it's so intriguing, right?
Yeah, so that's the idea in the sense, but we can also look at it in the positive light, right? In the sense, we can also say, see, somebody who is unfortunate to be born in some African village where half of the village has HIV positive. There are no schools in the village. There is no access to any good thing in his life. Imagine he goes human IPO and you get to give him some money for him to go figure out his path, just as an enablement. Just imagine the kind of impact you can make, right?
Yeah.
So there are situations in the world where humans are undervalued, they're overvalued or whatever. But I would say, mathematically speaking, this will at least give a better protocol to sort of value people at the end of the day in the relative conditions.
Wow. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. There is indeed a lot of, you can say, philosophical, sociological, moral implications of this, and how it plays out is only for us to see how it unfolds. Right. So I think that will be one hell of a journey to watch. And you're quite, I wish that MandeChain is at the forefront of it so that I get all the inner updates from what's happening there. Right. But it'll be very cool, I think. And do you think it will be natural that over time, the ability to track someone's net worth will be integrated into the system? It can't be an external. It can't be an externality to the system, right?
Yeah. So what is net worth? So if the whole economy runs on a chain, it becomes very, very plausible to do that. Right now, you own some assets as declared by the government. You own some assets on the chain. You have some value sitting in your bank, which is again controlled by the government or safeguarded by the government. So the system is, the way you calculate net worth itself is broken down and is given validation by multiple different systems, right? When the system levels when there is a system level integration on the blockchain or crypto technology, we'll definitely able to technically do it in the future.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's the idea, of tracking real-time net worth. I think if everything happens on chain, why not? Like if my land registration is on chain, the cars I own is on chain, if my crypto is on chain,
exactly,
my equities and mutual funds is on chain, if my monthly paychecks, everything is on chain, then yes, why not? We can do that.
So is this fair to say until this level of integration, system communication integration happens across, essentially, I mean, there are three worlds for that matter, I think. One is the assets that you do declare to your government, right? Which is going to be your car and your bank accounts and whatnot. All of those are declared. There is one, and the assets you own on the chain, right? Which may or may not be declared to the government. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I think there should broadly two kinds of assets then. Or the third, maybe, I mean, if we, for the sake of this discussion, it could be an undeclared asset, right? Which is there, which you're not, let's just ignore that for now, at least, right?
There are many undeclared assets. For example, the friendship I have with you is an asset. It's a form of, it brings me happiness, it brings me value, right? But it's not an asset.
We're talking about finance asset that can be translated into. If there is a protocol tomorrow that has the ability to translate our friendship into monetary value, and which you're saying CAS is actually indeed now should be possible theoretically. If that happens now, suddenly I have a third category. Wow, amazing! But that still will be put on chain, although it's a soft value.
Yes.
Got it. Amazing. Well, you know what? This is very interesting. I hope to see this world where these intangible things have been quantified somehow and being used for productive purposes and not just for selling drugs, hopefully. Yeah. So that is definitely something worth looking forward to. Now,
if such a world happens, right? See, I mean, if you ask question about why is selling drugs, why is drugs a bad thing? Why does government have to ban it, right? I mean, people say various different things, right? Like drugs will ruin your family, it will ruin your career, it will ruin everything about you, it will ruin people around you, it will sort of turn you into a monkey or whatever, right? So a lot of these things that people talk about as negative effects of drugs, in some sense, are unquantifiable subjective assets.
Unquantifiable subjective assets. You can call them negative assets?
No, I mean, see, if I do drugs and that impacts my family life, right? I'm ruining my wonderful family. It's an asset class. I'm rich, right? Having a great mom and dad and wife and kids and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
That's a wealth in itself, right? Right. And if I'm doing drugs and ruining my family situation, I'm essentially foregoing one wealth class for some other kind of subjective satisfaction.
Well, assuming that you're in a place to make that choice in a reasonable state of mind, that is where drugs get really tricky, because they challenge the fundamental assumption that every actor in the system, every person in the system is indeed a rational person, which is where, I mean, I think drugs hold a special place of hatred in terms of society that way. It takes away the fundamental assumption that this person is sane enough to make a reasonable decision.
I think actors have to subscribe to rationalism, but they don't have to be rational by themselves, right? In the sense, today computers are smarter than us. That's why for us to be rational, we are outsourcing a lot of logical computational work to computers, right? But we subscribe to rationalism, right? We are telling computer will compute all my logic really well and tell me what the output is, right? So what I'm trying to say is, we don't necessarily need all the human beings to be very extremely smart or extremely diligent or whatever, but we need to have a system which they can trust, which will be rational, right? What I'm trying to say is, today we are saying doing drugs is wrong. Maybe it is, no contestant, right? But what is drugs on an individual level, right? If I do drugs, what happens? Maybe my relationship with my dad and me will be broken. My mom and me will be broken. Maybe my wife and I cannot run a family effectively, which means I'm trading some short-term subjective satisfaction with something else.
Yes.
Right? Some other form of happiness in my life. What I'm trying to say is, if you can sort of put a framework and actually consider them as asset classes, you would actually make a good decision. So then nobody has to come in and put a rule saying you don't have to do drugs. You know that you should not.
Wow, that's a very different take, because now you're saying, you know what, earlier, because something was immeasurable, right? That made the decision of making this trade-off of letting go the longer term possibilities for a shorter term satisfaction and pleasure. Now it becomes clearly equal, that it's like I am trading ₹100 note to you with you for just 10 rupees.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
In that way, if I'm able to quantify, and then I'm like, every time I do drugs, basically I'm losing ₹90.
Exactly. Then why
Right?
would you do that?
Now I have to think, okay, do I want to break out of this chain? Do I not? Because my assets are beyond what I hold in my bank account. They are also in the form of these relationships I have with people. They are also in the form of, any future possibilities that I'm creating for myself. That's also an asset.
Exactly. Yeah. Your health is an asset, right? So,
Wow.
So what I'm trying to say is, the way we see economy or measure economy is very, very narrow right now. There is a lot of economic wealth beyond what is measured in economy.
I think, this is where the classic confusion between wealth and money arises. People mistake money for wealth. And I mean, that can be a topic for another discussion, because you have moved. I mean, that's you've moved back to your village in Andhra. In Andhra, right? Where are you?
Yeah,
you're in Andhra, right? So you moved back to your village in Andhra, and interestingly, for people watching, the name of the village, guys, is also Medarametla. That's his surname. I find that very cool. But you moved back there because you had a certain notion of what wealth means for you, and you had this ability to visualize wealth beyond monetary amount that you're collecting, and that somewhere has influenced your decision making in making your life choices, the kinds of risks you're taking, the kind of problems that you're picking up to solve, all of those, and the relationships you have with people. You've taken all of those into account, and not just, hey, if I'm a city, I get a better package, or I may be able to be surround myself with bigger VCs, something like that, which is maybe a more monetary, narrow view of looking at wealth, right?
Last year, I sort of did 2 trips. Like, I vacationed a little bit, right? I went to 2 places, and very unplanned. Like, 2 friends called me in 2 different times, and I happened to go to these 2 locations, right? One, I went to Dubai. I stayed 15 days in Dubai, right? On a separate occasion, I stayed 15 days in Shillong in Northeast, in Meghalaya, right? When I went there, I sort of found out about people over there, how economy works, how much salaries are they being paid, lifestyle things, right? What I heard is in Dubai, 90% of the citizens, like the actual residents or localites of Dubai, most of them are employed with the government, and they keep getting a paycheck to get by, right? So government keeps giving them money because government has a lot of money coming in from petrol and all this oil economy, right? On the other hand, I went to Shillong. In Shillong, there is no proper government. Government has a very, very small role to play. The local culture and the way they sort of imbibe values, that itself runs things locally. There is very little role for cash. Most of them either sort of make their own farms or grow their own animals, starting from pigs to hens and everything. They sort of make it themselves. They have a very minor role. All the people out there are very healthy. Life expectancy is very high. Women are the. It's a matriarchal society.
Wow.
So when I went to Dubai, I saw all these buildings, this rich state, right, flooded with money and this economic power and luxury and stuff like that, right? And I went to Shillong and I saw all these people who basically does not need any cash to get by, right? They don't need cash. Their life can run from morning to evening because they're getting their food, they're getting their happiness. They are sitting together and singing their songs without need for cash, right? So I mean, it's a beautiful contrast, in the way we see things. That, to be honest, in my mind, I started to think like, which is better, right? I mean, rationally, I felt I concluded saying both of them are equally chill. Just because they have fast cars and skyscrapers, I don't think their quality of life is any different. They have problems, these will have problems, right? So when we start putting this subjective value or valuation to the subjective things, right, then our entire perception of economic wealth changes. So I think that's exactly what we can do, right? The moment we say human IPO, we can start accommodating all these forms of wealth in next.
Got it. No, I think this is a fantastic idea in itself, and we've spoken about the fundamentals, like the principles that are behind this and what possibilities could arise. I want to get into the technical part now, right? Where we want to talk about what is the role of blockchain in it, and then how does the protocol work and it would be great if we can have some analogies being brought in to understand if these concepts are hard, but in a simple term, how would you explain what does credibility mean in blockchain, and what are some examples with which I can aggregate bigger and bigger credibility over time and be this trusted anonymous person, right? So how does it work behind the surface, under the surface? Let's talk about that now.
Yeah. So see, trust again, like we discussed, it's very psychological, it's very human, it's very subjective, right? It's one form of emotion. Trust, whether trust is there or not there. If the salt is there in the whole dish, the dish tastes good. Otherwise, it doesn't, right? So that's the role of trust in every human being's life. So we sort of, we sort of decided what can be a very good voting mechanism or a voting system, right? When you take a government, we spoke about democracy. We give one vote to each person, and they will elect one person as trustable person, and they will elect another person as a prime minister or whatever, right? So that's a voting system. So generally, trust as a problem in groups is being solved by some form of voting systems, right? So what we thought is, okay, why isn't there a many-to-many voting system in the world? Where when I say many-to-many vote, many people can vote on many other people can vote back on these many other people, right? So that's a many-to-many voting system, right? So if such a system exists, where a lot of people can vote on a lot others, and we have this data about votes, now that votes will become a proxy for us to sort of indicatively say how much each of them can be trusted, or each of them can be based on how many votes they have received. So at the end of the day, MandeChain is exactly trying to build that. We are trying to build a many-to-many humanity scale voting machine. That's our vision, right?
So wait. You said this is many-to-many voting system software. Let's bring in Facebook in this once, just because everyone is comfortable with Facebook, and it was meant, and maybe even Twitter for that matter. The idea was that I had a network of some 1,000, 2,000 friends here, right? Each of them has another 1,000, 2,000 friends, and so on. So we are interconnected on Facebook like a graph. We can imagine all these, right, one person having many connections and each person having many connections. So there's this happening. We can visualize that. So Facebook is simpler to imagine that way, so that people understand it better. Now, let's say if Facebook was to implement this protocol, I want to imagine what it would look like. How would I interface with it? How would I interact with it? Will I go on Sandeep's profile, your profile, and then say, hey, you know what? I trust Sandeep +1.
Exactly.
Is it as simple as that? And you may say that, you know what, maybe he likes me, but I don't think this guy is trustable. So you give me a 0.5.
Yeah.
Is it as literally as simple, or am I oversimplifying?
So, logically speaking, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
The idea we're trying to create here is, because blockchains and cryptocurrencies have actually attached wealth, or actual transaction value to the tokens. What if Facebook gives you FB tokens, which have a value, and we will limit you by saying, you know what, you can only use these many tokens to vote. Your total supply of tokens is this much, because that's how much wealth you have, and you can choose to vote on anybody with these tokens, right? So there is some kind of scarcity there.
Fair enough.
So if you take the whole many-to-many voting machine itself as a system, the number of voting tokens you have is a representation of your ownership in the entire system also.
Okay.
Why
should you or I have different number of tokens is the first question then.
For whatever, it depends. It depends on the protocol itself, on how it decides to reward people in the whole system, right?
Let's talk about your specific protocol. Is it currently being made? Is it in place? Our first version is in place?
It's being made. We might launch a testnet by August.
Okay.
And
so
it will all from there.
Let's take one sample system and let's fix some numbers, even though they may not be what you exactly launch with, or they may not necessarily also be what you propose necessarily that this is the better one. Let's take an example. let's take an example and let's stick through it with to the end, and so that we can visualize what is this human network capital looking like, right, in form of trust. So you said my number of votes, which is equal to like degree of influence in the system, is proportionate to my ownership in the system. Like, where does this ownership in the system come from? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so let's take three people, right? It's a simple three people system.
Done.
A, B, and C. Let's imagine, when the whole genesis happened, A, B, and C, three of them had 100 tokens each, right? And the system on the whole has 300 tokens, right? 100 tokens each. Then we will say, hey, A, B, and C, with these 100 tokens each, you vote on each other to certify each other of your credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then A and B, both of them decide to vote on C with their hand, right? Because they think C is like this very, very credible guy for whatever reasons we don't know of, right? So the tokens are still with them, but the voting representation went to C, right? Now C has his 100. He decided to not to vote on anybody. So now if we look at this simple system, A received 0 votes, B received 0 votes, C received 200 votes. Okay. Now we have some kind of work in the system for which there is a reward. Okay. That work can be validation of the blocks. That can be selling of an NFT, or it can be some other job in any country, right? So that's the idea. Now we have some kind of work. Now because C has the most number of votes, received votes, the system thinks C is the more credible guy, so let me give this work to C.
Got it. Okay.
So after C completes that work, C gets 100 more tokens as a reward because he did a job, right? So now what is the situation? A has 100 tokens of which votes went to C. B has 100 tokens of which votes went to C. C has 200 votes received from both of them. He also has 200 coins of his own. Now A and B decided, hey man, this guy sort of got this undue advantage over us because we voted on him, and he didn't do anything back to us for whatever help we have done to him. So let's withdraw our votes. So imagine both of A and B decide to take back their 100 votes and vote on each other now.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, now A has 100 votes received and 100 coins in value. B has 100 votes received, 100 coins in value. C has 200 coins, but he didn't vote on anybody as usual.
Okay.
So next time one more work comes into system.
Now it may go to A or B.
Exactly.
Maybe for a lower price, because at least they have some credibility. So they can earn credibility by doing this gig for a slightly lower price because C still has a little bit more credibility. So you're saying that way, everyone, it's so far what I can imagine in this is one is we started with the assumption that everyone starts off with an equal stake in the system. We started with that assumption here, but that doesn't have to be true.
It doesn't have to be true.
Will it be the case that the more tokens I buy into the system with my current wealth, the more the number of tokens will I have necessarily?
The more coin you have in the system, that also means that the more voting you can do, right? So you can collaborate with other people and say, hey, I'll vote on you. But if you make money because of that, you send some of that money to me back.
No, I'm saying the starting conditions need to be really carefully designed, because otherwise the inequality that is there in influence in this world today, especially due to my monetary wealth, right? I may not, let's say I'm simply an incompetent person who happens to be born to a rich dad. Yes. With his money, I buy tokens more into the system. Wouldn't that compromise the integrity of the system? That's what I'm trying to understand here. That I can I may not receive many votes, that I understand, but I still have the ability to assign these votes to my favored people. So that's what I'm trying to understand here.
Yeah, so definitely we need to sort of take care of a lot of short-term evolutionary perspective, what might happen versus long-term. In the long term, we need to think about how the protocol can equalize things or, keep the system fair over long term. In the short term, yes, I mean, some people can form mobs and gain undue advantage because of that, or somebody can bring in external wealth and buy tokens in the system and start controlling the system.
Exactly.
So I think like any other crypto system, right? In a sense, Bitcoin is much more hackable on day one compared to today. right? So is Ethereum, so is any other system, right? So like any cryptographic systems, this system also would go through its own vulnerability in the beginning. But we need to sort of optimize the security of system in such a way that it sort of equalizes over long term and becomes strong.
Got it. And one more important angle here would be that trust is not, so in terms of mathematics, it's not a scalar. Trust is more like a vector, right?
Yeah,
I may trust Sandeep with, let's say, creating a startup, but I may not trust Sandeep with being a lifeguard at an ocean, right? In that context. So trust that way is a vector. It is in regard to two things. One is the person who it is aimed at, their person's competence, right? And second, it has this variable of my relationship with that person. Am I correct on this?
Right.
So the relation that between these two people, there's this factor of relationship and as well as the competence, right? So how does this system take into account these two pieces?
So on the protocol layer, right, in the sense what we have as a many-to-many voting machine is the foundation of it, right? Now, within the users of this system, another a bunch of people can come and form another subgroup, right? And call them, we are all artists, for example, and we will start certifying each other. So when I say many-to-many computer, it's like a tree, right? In the sense you have a whole humanity on it, you have subgroups on it, you have all kinds of groups on it, and they start certifying each other. And all of this leads to imprints on chain.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's basically at the end of the day, groups, within groups or communities, people certifying each other for what they are.
Yeah. Understood. No, I think this is very interesting because this is happening. So the entire thing is, it's not new from the sense that people have been doing democratic voting forever, like technically for long enough period. People have been forming associations for a long time. They've had certifications, awards, everything built within these unique siloed institutions. You're saying the first version probably could look just like a mimicry of what's happening outside, maybe, right? Yeah. And then people realize, oh, you know what? I don't have to be limited by the same old rules. I can tweak things around. Let me play around with all these possibilities, and then the system overall kind of gets lifted to a way more organized and efficient in some ways of indicating someone's credibility, and hence on top of that, then use cases will start coming in, right? But it has to necessarily ride on at least one use case which people really believe in. It's like the product market fit equivalent. So I think for me now the question is, what are the possible first use cases that enough people want to participate in, saying that, you know what, I don't know if I want to certify someone's art right now. That doesn't sound like, to me at least, I may be wrong, but to me at least it doesn't feel like the first use case that people will build on it. What do you think would be the first use case that you would possibly see here?
So the first use case we are starting off is very, very technical in nature.
Just a second. Yeah, we got blocked. Say again.
In any crypto network, there are people who keep the compute, right? In the sense, people who run the infrastructure, right? So our first use case is actually make this work with them. That's why we're calling it proof of credibility. So what we're saying is, okay, anybody who runs a server to run the network, so generally we are building this on a technology platform called Cosmos. So there are about 150 people on the network, 150 independent servers who run the network. So we're basically saying, now you play the game within each of you, the 150 people on this network itself. Okay. So that's our first step.
And assign credibility for what these servers will.
So generally there is something called a mining reward. Every 7 seconds is block time. For every block height, the system rewards people who run these, do the work of running these computers for the work they have done. That reward will be distributed proportional to their credibility.
Got it. And in this use case, we're talking about computational credibility.
Yeah, for computational credibility is acting as a filter for them to get the reward.
Got it. And there is no external human element to it today.
Yeah, there's no external human element to. That is the first level. Understood. Number one, right? Level number one. The level number 2 applications can be communities or DAOs, right? The examples you told about, right? It can be a self-help group, bunch of people coming together and giving each other loans, right? You heard about this use case called chit funds, right? Now chit funds generally happen between 20 or 30 people who know each other. What if these people don't know each other? Like, how can you sort of make these people into groups and make them certify each other and then make them pay, right? So that kind of use case can come up next. DeFi. So anything to do with groups and cooperation and people coming together to do things, that kind of use case can happen on the chain.
Got it. And the protocol can take the shape of whatever the community wants it to be.
Exactly. It's programmable. Just like, Ethereum can create smart contracts. This protocol is about voting machines. How do you start building your own voting machines and write logic on top of it?
Understood. Very interesting. I think these are only then in that sense, the first baby steps. The early adopters are going to be necessarily, as you said, people who are already technically engaged in this system in some way, and servers and whatever computational arrangement that they have between them for proof of credibility, proof of work and all, for wherever they are engaging in already. You want to bring this system as a layer on top of it so that it gets adopted between a small set first, then see where it goes, evolve that, and then slowly expand the use cases and what all it encompasses. Am I right?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So this sounds great. I think we've covered a bunch of things here. For people who may be more interested in knowing about this, right? Where do they go and check out, study this, maybe your venture, and also this concept of credibility more? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Please go to our website, www.mande.network. We have a white paper on it. I think white paper is a great place to start. You can also log into our Discord channel. The moment you're on our Discord channel, we have people talking there very actively. And of course, we are also writing a lot of blog posts as we launch about MandeChain and our voting machines and stuff like that. So you can keep track of us there. If you're a programmer, or if you are somebody who is a community builder in crypto, or if you would like to invest in MandeChain, also you can be really active on our communities and networks and eventually help us out. MandeChain is a truly community project. There is no one person who is doing it. Right now, there are about 4 programmers who are contributing to it. We are adding more developers. So it's a completely community thing. It's a community built by community for the community, incentives for the community sort of a structure. I am nobody. I just initiated the whole effort. So you can call me initiator, but essentially that's the way we are taking this whole operation. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I think this is something that that is definitely going to be a part of our future in some form or the other, at the very least. Probably do you think that the next decade will see 10 years, just 10 years, 2032 we're talking about? Do you think very significantly big changes might be coming in just a decade, or it may take longer?
Future is very tough to predict. But, we can definitely say that if people are given better tools to do things, they will come up with newer and better ways to do things, and they will probably end up doing something totally different, right? So as builders, we can only worry about what is the kind of tool we are putting into people's hands. Just like stones created Stone Age and tools later created different ages, we can definitely imagine, what these new tools can do to people.
Wow, that is one damn good way to look at it. The best of the entrepreneurs are the ones who enable others become an entrepreneur. Enable others become their better selves, their creative selves. And I think if something like this, as you rightly said, can put some extra tools in people's hand, people will figure out the best things to sculpt out of them. Right. Exactly. So I think that's a very, very optimistic way to look at it, optimistic and creative way to look at it. And that reminds me of my mission of why I'm doing this. I believe in the optimism and creativity of people personally. You do too, as you just said. And that is my motivation to do this podcast. And I'm really glad that you showed up today. Thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us today, Sandeep.
Thank you, Nivedan, for exploring depth of my mind and thought. You really have that nerve to sort of ask the right questions and go down to somebody's mind, and that too in a very positive spirited and optimistic way. You never criticize or put something down, and that takes something to do it. It's not easy for anybody to do that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I like to call myself a curious optimist rather than a curious skeptic, or rather critical skeptic. So I'm that category. I have a lot of these questions, and probably offline as well. I think our interactions will carry on. We have some of the interesting things to talk about as well. And just to give a little bit of teaser to people, we are possibly going to explore for some sort of storytelling to help the rest of the world imagine, even for ourselves for that matter. I think we need storytelling more in the world of blockchain, and I'm looking forward to see what we can do with that idea.
See, I mean, to be honest, for a lot of developers, especially blockchain development or programming for blockchain has become incredibly easy right now. Anybody can build it. What makes the difference is the storytellers, community builders, people who actually represent the market.
Yes.
So I mean, blockchain is very welcoming that way. Just like get into Web3, get into crypto. I mean, it's all about storytelling, marketing. Don't think this is some technically intensive jargon, very deep. I don't understand this. Everybody has a place to play if you are curious enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this, I think we can end our podcast for the day. This was actually a very good journey for me to go deep into this very new topic and a very new set of possibilities that may arise. Now I'm bursting with even more ideas in my head, which I have no way to control at this point. So I'm going to end this right away. It was great talking to you, Sandeep. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye.